It is the farthest anyone has ever gone. Yet humankind's greatest adventure was also its riskiest.
Anything could happen. A better question is, what couldn't have gone wrong?
On every Apollo mission, failure loomed.
Yeah, we were that close to disaster.
Unforeseen problems very nearly spawned tragedy.
I don't know what happened here. We had everything in the world drop
More
out.
warning lights came on than I'd ever seen in training for any failure ever.
Only now are we uncovering the gutsy, grave, and little-known secrets of the Apollo moon landings. The Apollo missions were never meant to be mind-altering voyages of exploration. By the spring of 1961, the Soviet Union had launched the world's first satellite and put the first man, Yuri Gagarin, in space. America's new president, John Kennedy, was looking for a way to reverse the tide.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
There was a lot of pressure to demonstrate American technological supremacy by landing on the moon. The American taxpayers, the farmers in Iowa, they wanted America to win, to beat, those Soviets, those dirty commies.
Few Americans questioned the wisdom or the danger of racing to the moon in just 9 years, as Kennedy proposed.
You buy into these things if you're going to be an astronaut. If you can't buy into these, you shouldn't be an astronaut.
And at no time were the dangers greater than at the program's start. The full details of which we are still learning today. January 1967. 3 years before Kennedy's deadline, NASA is woefully behind schedule. All over the country, 400,000 people are struggling to ready the vehicles that will take 3 men to the moon. They're like nothing ever flown before. The giant rocket needed to boost the astronaut spaceship from Earth orbit, the world's largest. The spaceship itself, the command and service module, and the most difficult challenge, the lunar module, meant to ferry the astronauts from their mothership to the moon. As delays mount, the pressure intensifies.
We had problems in many areas. It was a 7-day, 12-hour-a-day week at best, and at worst, we'd go 12, 14, 16 hours a day just to get the job done.
I think we got ourselves in a mode where we were running too fast.
Still, no one foresees the tragedy that is about to unfold. The first Apollo mission will be a shakedown flight of the astronauts' mothership, the command module. The mission leader is Gus Grissom, the second American ever to fly in space. But when Grissom examines his spacecraft, he's dismayed. His fellow astronaut, John Young, urges him to complain about the shoddy wiring.
You could see these big wire bundles and they were all looped around everywhere. I said, Gus, you ought to tell them about this wiring, it's really bad. And he says, if I say anything, they'll fire me.
Not even Grissom realizes his life is in danger.
Gus, what do you think your chances are for an Apollo flight?
I think they're pretty good.
You think you will one day make one of the trips to the moon, then?
I'm planning on it.
On January 27th, Grissom joins his Apollo 1 crewmates, Ed White and Roger Chaffee, for a test of the spacecraft. They call it Plugs Out.
The Plugs Out test was the first real test of the Apollo 1 spacecraft. It's using its own power, it's using its own fuel, it's using its own oxygen, and it's operating by itself.
On a launch pad in Cape Canaveral, Florida, the astronauts are sealed inside the ship, which is pumped full of pure oxygen and pressurized just as it would be in space.
I don't think we had a full appreciation of the risk we were taking when we had 15, 16 psi of oxygen inside that spacecraft. I don't think any of us had properly evaluated the dangers.
The test drags on for hours when communication breaks down. While the astronauts wait for workers to fix the radios, disaster strikes. Beneath Grissom's seat, a frayed wire sparks and quickly bursts into flame in the highly pressurized oxygen.
Something I'll never forget, obviously, is it's 6:31 p.m. Friday night. I remember it very well. We heard fire in the spacecraft, and of course you're shocked. Then you look at the camera monitors, and you can see the flames.
We heard this fire. We've got a fire in here. Then all of a sudden, it exploded.
The blast repels the first to the rescue. When others race in to free the astronauts, they too are forced back by toxic smoke and blazing heat.
The only way was to get on our knees and crawl under the smoke, get a good gulp of air, and hold our, just hold it and go in and work a little bit. Somebody that's come in behind you do the same thing.
The hatch is so heavy and cumbersome, it takes more than 4 minutes to open it. They're too late.
All we could hear was the sounds of the metal cooling, cracking, popping. We knew that we had lost our team.
America's first 3 Apollo astronauts were trapped and killed by a flash fire that swept their moonship early tonight during...
Once that fire got started, it was unstoppable. And of course, once the astronauts' air hoses burned through, they were asphyxiated.
The 3 men are honored as fallen warriors. But a crushed Apollo team gives no thought to halting the race to the moon.
And I was going to be the flight director on that first flight. And I was in the control center when the fire happened. It was a horrible experience. Very horrible experience. We all became very different people subsequent to that occurrence.
Gus and Roger and Ed made a great sacrifice. But if we hadn't had the fire, we wouldn't have got to the moon, because that's the only thing that fixed it.
Not only will NASA continue the moon race, it vows to stick to Kennedy's end-of-decade deadline. In just 17 months, it rebuilds the Apollo spacecraft from the ground up, with a hatch that can pop off in 3 seconds. And even before the new ship takes flight, NASA makes a startling announcement. Before 1968 is out, a 3-man Apollo team will become the first to leave Earth for the moon.
We have concluded that we are now ready to fly the most advanced mission for our Apollo 8 launch in December.
Here we are, having had the fire, and the last time we tried to fly, it was a bold step to do anything like that.
The astronauts of Apollo 8 won't attempt a landing, but they will become the first to cross the vast 240,000-mile gulf between planet Earth and its lone satellite. The youngest of the crew and a father of 5, Bill Anders, applies for life insurance just before the mission. He is rejected.
And I decided that our chances of having a fully successful mission, going up and coming back as planned on this first flight, were about 1 chance in 3. That the chances of having a totally disastrous mission, not coming back, were also about 1 chance in 3.
If Apollo 8 succeeds, the U.S. will overtake the Soviets in the space race. But it's a huge gamble on the lives of 3 more men. December 1968. The crew of Apollo 8, Jim Lovell, Frank Borman, and Bill Anders, braces for the most dangerous mission yet undertaken in space. Not only will Apollo 8 be man's first mission to the moon, it will have far less backup than NASA ever intended. The lunar module, the craft Apollo's astronauts will use to land on the moon, is still under construction. Apollo 8 will fly without it.
The plan had always been we're going to have both the command module and the lunar module, and that way, if there's a problem, we'll have a whole other extra spacecraft along to back us up.
Without the lunar module's second engine, Apollo 8 must rely for its safe return on the lone engine of its main spacecraft. And that's not the only risk these three men are facing. They're about to become the first to ride the largest and most powerful rocket ever built, the Saturn V.
We're talking about a rocket that has as much chemical energy as a small nuclear bomb. You don't take the decision to put people on top of that thing lightly.
At 363 feet, the Saturn V is taller than the Statue of Liberty. It has 3 million parts and holds nearly 1 million gallons of fuel.
Anything could happen.
55 seconds and counting.
But one rocket motor could explode it. You could have had a fan motor go out, tear everything up.
20 seconds and counting.
A better question is, what couldn't have gone wrong?
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
The Saturn's engines need 7 seconds to build the enormous thrust necessary for liftoff. 7.5 million pounds. Liftoff demands split-second precision. The 9 arms must all release within 50 milliseconds, or the rocket will fall into the launch tower and explode. At mission control, the flight director holds his breath, ready to call an abort if the rocket goes astray.
A loss of thrust at that time requires instant reaction. That is sweaty palms time for me.
On board, the astronauts soon learn that if one spots trouble, he has little hope of alerting the others.
The noise was terrific. If we'd had to abort, we really couldn't. I mean, I could not communicate that to Frank Borman, the commander. It was violent, sideways, shaking. I felt like a rat in the jaws of a terrier.
If you can envision a 360-foot long limber fishing pole and some big guy's wiggling it down on this end and you're out on the other end going like this. And that's what Saturn felt like.
On December 21st, 1968, the first men to ride the mighty Saturn are relieved to see it perform flawlessly.
Apollo 8, you're looking good. Roger.
66 hours later, Apollo 8 swings around the moon's leading edge and enters lunar orbit.
Go ahead, Houston, Apollo 8. Apollo 8, this is Houston. Roger, I wanted to hear your voice.
Reminded me of when I was a kid down in San Diego, going out to La Jolla Shores Beach, that it looked like dirty beach sand. Got a lot of mail from the poets who thought I could come up with something better, but that's what it looked like.
See, I think the best way to describe this area is a vastness of black and white. Absolutely no color. A vast, lonely, or expanse of nothing.
Yet the sight that thrills the astronauts most is not 70 miles below, but 250,000 miles in the distance.
We were coming around the line of lunar sunrise, and we're all amazed to see the Earth pop up. There was a scramble for cameras.
Although his crewmates have disputed it, Bill Anders claims credit for capturing the image called Earthrise that has become one of the world's best known.
After all of the preparation, after the split-second planning of everything on the mission. The big surprise waiting for them at the other end is not about the moon. It's about seeing our home planet as a very tiny, very precious oasis of life and color in the blackness of space.
I think I must have the feeling that the travelers in the old sailing ships used to have. Apollo 8 Houston, Roger. Got any more information on those rigs?
Anders, Borman, and Lovell spend 20 hours in lunar orbit. Then, as their final rotation takes them behind the moon, the time comes for the crucial step that determines if they make it home.
Apollo 8, this is Houston. All systems are go. Over.
Their single engine must fire.
Roger, thank you, Houston. Apollo 8.
And it must fire precisely. If it conks out early, they will swing wide and miss the Earth. If it won't fire at all, they cannot escape the moon's gravity and will be stuck there forever.
You become a permanent monument, orbiting monument to technological failure going around the moon.
With the spacecraft out of range on the moon's far side, engineers in Houston are in the dark. They know the exact time they should hear from the ship.
We were watching those clocks. I mean, like a hawk.
If they hear nothing, they'll know the engine has failed.
Boy, that clock hit 0.
Apollo 8, Houston. Houston, Apollo 8, over.
And we heard from the spacecraft.
Roger. Please be informed there is a Santa Claus. Hello, Apollo 8. You're the best ones to know.
Apollo 8 is a complete success, and it catapults the U.S. to the lead in the space race for the first time. But NASA still has to meet its most difficult challenge: a lunar landing. Few know today that just to train for the venture nearly cost one astronaut his life. To prepare to fly in a world with no air and just 1/6 the gravity of Earth, the astronauts climb into this contraption, dubbed the flying bedstead. A jet engine pointed at the ground balances the bedstead as if it's in lunar gravity. And it is just as dangerous. In May 1968, Neil Armstrong readies for a flight. Bill Anders had flown earlier that day.
Unbeknownst to Neil or I, it had a fuel level sensor that had gone out of whack. And he was making a landing, and he ran out of attitude control fuel.
Without the vital fluid, the bedstead goes berserk.
The thing flew around like a ruptured balloon, and just as it was going to hit the ground, it kind of went straight up, and he ejected.
Had Armstrong delayed just a second longer, few would know his name today.
He did make it down safely. The only injury he said he had was he bit his tongue when he hit the ground.
But on the airless moon, parachutes will be useless. Eight months later, NASA announces the crew for the historic mission. Neil Armstrong, together with Buzz Aldrin, will be the first humans ever to try to land on the moon. A challenge that will not only test their piloting skills, but also their partnership. July 1969. The eyes of the world turn to Cape Canaveral, Florida. The 3 astronauts of Apollo 11 are in their last days of preparation for man's first attempt to visit the moon. Behind the scenes, tension has divided the crew.
They had less than 7 months to train for the most ambitious space mission in history. So it's no surprise that strain got to them.
While Michael Collins practices separately to fly the command module, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin train side by side for the landing and moonwalk. Unresolved between them is the sensitive question of who will be first on the moon.
The training guys couldn't make a firm decision one way or another, so I went to Neil and I said, we need a decision on this. Now, was I striving to be the first guy out? No.
Apollo managers, including Chris Kraft, make the difficult decision.
There was no question in our mind that the man that went out on the lunar surface the first time was going to be the Lindbergh, the Charles Lindbergh of his time. Not that we said we don't want Aldrin. That isn't the way we made the decision. We made the decision on what we thought was best for the country.
It's unanimous. The quiet, confident commander, Neil Armstrong, will be the first on the moon.
Apollo 11, this is Houston. You are confirmed to go for orbit.
On July 19th, 1969, Apollo 11 enters lunar orbit.
Apollo 11, this is Houston. All your systems are looking good. We're about to open the hatch now. Right.
Connected to the mothership, accessible through a tunnel, is the lunar module, known as Eagle.
Hello, Eagle, Houston. We're standing by, over.
On July 20th, Armstrong and Aldrin seal themselves inside Eagle.
Roger, Eagle, done got. Roger, how does it look? Eagle has wings. Roger.
The astronauts will try to bring Eagle down on an area of the moon called the Sea of Tranquility. They have just 12 minutes before they run out of fuel. Just one chance to land where none have gone before.
This is a CBS News special report. Man on the Moon.
Back on Earth, 600 million people tune in to live coverage. The first time the world can witness a mission of exploration as it happens. Walter Cronkite describes the descent as nearly flawless.
Orbit, which will take it down to the moon's surface.
But 240,000 miles away, an unseen drama unfolds.
Good signal strength and flew. Into the ag, 47 degrees. Roger. Eagle, we got you now. It's looking good, over.
Trouble begins just 3 minutes into the flight. Armstrong sees that the autopilot is taking them past their landing site. An ominous prospect amid the deep craters of the moon.
Neil doesn't usually say something unless he really means it. He said, I think we're going to be a little long. I was amazed that he could just tell from looking that we were going to be a little long.
But soon, the astronauts are distracted by another problem, an alarm.
1202. 1202.
The computer that flies the spacecraft has stopped performing some crucial tasks.
During the critical landing phase, you want to know what altitude rate, and what is your velocity. Well, when the computer has program alarm, it blanks out all of those.
If the alarm continues, the computer will stall completely.
Same alarm, and it appears to come up when we have a 1668 up.
The news takes a second and a half to reach Eugene Krantz's team in mission control.
Roger, copy. 1202. Yeah, 1202, we copy it. Give us a reading on the 1202 program alarm.
Without an answer soon, the astronauts will have to abort and try to link back up with the command module. It falls to Jack Garman, a 24-year-old computer expert in a back room at Mission Control, to diagnose the problem.
When something like this happens, you're looking for other cues, something else to go wrong, and nothing was going wrong.
The computer is overloaded, but it is still flying the spacecraft.
I looked down at my little checklist of all these possible alarm codes and concluded quickly it was one of these that if it didn't happen over and over and over, things would be okay, and that was the call I gave.
On Garman's advice, the astronauts get the order to continue.
Roger, we got you. We're going at alarm. Same time, we're go, flight.
Okay, we're go.
But when Armstrong turns his attention back to the moon, a new danger looms.
Pretty rocky area. Roger.
Apollo 11 is on a path to destruction.
Armstrong looks out the window at the spot where the computer is taking them, and lo and behold, it is in the middle of a crater the size of a football field that is strewn with boulders.
50 feet down at 4.
Neil Armstrong takes control of the spacecraft.
Pretty rocky area.
Neil, he sort of leveled off and was scooting across the surface at 300 or 400 feet, and we were just watching the fuel go down.
Armstrong's heart rate spikes to 150 beats per minute. He must land soon, or he will run out of fuel.
We got to 100 feet and they called out 60 seconds.
60 seconds.
And a light comes on,
Lights on.
indicating that you have 60 seconds of fuel. That's not a whole lot at 100 feet. Whatever concern I had, I wasn't about to add to the anxiety of the guy on my left.
On the far side of an 80-foot crater, amid boulders as big as cars, Armstrong sees a level spot.
Looks like a good area ahead. I got the shadow up there. Backlight. Okay, engine stop. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
We were all so excited, I couldn't even pronounce tranquility. It came out twanquility.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
I looked at him and my arm just went up to pat him on the shoulder, and we clearly had a smile of a satisfaction, to be mild about it. Satisfaction. Hell, we just done the impossible.
Seven hours later, at 10 p.m. Houston time, the worldwide audience witnesses an amazing sight.
Are you getting a TV picture now, Houston? Neil, yes, we are getting a TV picture. Okay, ready for me to come out? All set. I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
That's one small step.
37-year-old Neil Armstrong and 38-year-old Buzz Aldrin become the first humans to set foot on another world.
Beautiful view. Isn't that something? Magnificent sight out here. Magnificent desolation.
But NASA's mission is only half complete. It has put men on the moon. Now it has to get them home. Armstrong and Aldrin's safe return relies on the single engine of their lunar module to get them off the moon. But after hours exposed to the sun's heat and radiation, there's no guarantee the engine will fire. If it doesn't, the two astronauts are stuck, a nightmare that has haunted them since long before liftoff.
What will your plans be in the extremely unlikely event that the lunar module does not come up off the lunar surface?
Well, it's an unpleasant thing to think about. We've chosen not to think about that up to the present time.
NASA even warns the White House to prepare for disaster. Aides draft a eulogy for President Richard Nixon to deliver in case the astronauts are left to die on the moon.
These brave men, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, know that there is no hope for their recovery, but they also know that there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice.
Orbiting above, Michael Collins would watch helplessly. Without landing gear, he cannot mount a rescue.
We'd be working until our oxygen ran out, and when the oxygen runs out, you're just gonna pass out, go to sleep, and that's it.
Tranquility Base, Houston. Roger, go ahead.
To add to the tension, the astronauts discover a switch for arming the engine is broken. They must find a way to fix it.
Roger, understand. We're number one on the runway. Roger.
The answer? Aldrin jams a pen into the console.
Gas engine is armed. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
In 4 minutes, the astronauts are 30,000 feet above the moon.
Looking good,
Within a few hours, they are safe inside the command module.
We had the biggest splashdown party that you have ever seen. The party went from motel to hotel to up street into everywhere.
The race to the moon is won. Armstrong, Collins, and Aldrin enjoy a goodwill tour around the world. Even the Soviets send congratulations, although they also deny ever joining a space race. But the euphoria fades quickly. It's not long before Americans are treating Apollo's successes as routine, and most forget the perils of venturing to the moon. They are about to get a jolting reminder. November 14, 1969. Apollo 12 stands on the launch pad. With Pete Conrad and Richard Gordon, Alan Bean is about to make his first space flight.
And about 3 minutes prior to go, Pete reached out his hand like this, you know, and Dick put his on there and I put mine. We looked at each other, we didn't say anything. We really wanted to do a good job. We wanted Apollo 12 to be a great mission.
Ignition sequence start. 6,
It pours rain,
4, 3.
but Apollo 12 lifts off exactly on schedule.
None of us knew that launching into rain was a big deal. Nobody had thought about this, strangely enough.
Pete Conrad reports that your program is in.
For 30 seconds, the ride is uneventful.
Baby is really going.
And all of a sudden you saw a shock of light.
Cameras on the launch pad capture the amazing event.
This humongous vehicle generates its own bolt of lightning. The lightning came from the vehicle down to the pad, and I can see it right now.
The force of the giant Saturn hurtling into the rain-soaked clouds creates a massive electric current that follows the rocket's exhaust into the ground.
I don't know what happened here. We had everything in the world drop out.
They lost everything, computers, gyros, everything in the spacecraft.
We didn't know what it was. All of a sudden, all these lights come on. I mean, we'd never seen anything even close to it. We didn't have the slightest idea what to do.
With a 6 million pound rocket at its tail, Apollo 12 is racing toward space at over 1,000 miles an hour. And its crew is literally flying blind.
Fuel zone 1 and 2, main bus A and B out.
Engineers in Houston are just as shocked to see their computers go haywire.
Everything went squirrely, absolutely squirrely, and all the lights came on, and it all happened instantly.
But John Aaron has an idea.
I realized that this massive light pattern that came on wasn't just random. There was actually a pattern to it that I recognized. The primary power source had been kicked offline.
The astronauts reboot the fuel cells. In seconds, the spacecraft is up and running again.
Okay, we're all organized again, Jack.
We've had a couple of cardiac arrests down here too, Pete.
Hey, I'll tell you one thing, it's a first-class ride, Houston.
You gotta go orbit, you're looking good.
Man, oh man. Wasn't that a 10-day every game?
4 days later, Pete Conrad steps onto the lunar surface.
Man, that may have been a small one for Neil, but that's a long one for me. Take your time.
In the end, the lightning strike does little damage to Apollo 12. On November 24th, 1969, it splashes down safely in the Pacific. But more misfortune awaits Apollo's astronauts. Just 4.5 months later, 3 more men find themselves staring down death in outer space. April 13th, 1970. 2 days after launch, America's third mission to the moon is speeding through space at 5,000 feet per second. While the Apollo 13 crew is performing routine maintenance, an electric short inside an oxygen tank triggers a massive explosion and brings on the words that would become legendary.
Houston, we've had a problem. Stand by, 13, we're looking at it.
Astronaut Fred Hayes' first thoughts are not about survival, but the unique opportunity he's just lost.
Very quickly, when I realized we had lost one oxygen tank, I knew we had lost the landing. And the biggest feeling I had was sick, just a sick feeling in my stomach. I knew we had failed, and all the work done was for naught.
But soon, Hayes and his shipmates, Jim Lovell and Jack Swigert, realize the situation is far more grave.
So we are venting something.
They spot precious oxygen pouring from their ship.
The gas of some sort.
The astronauts don't just need oxygen to breathe. They use it in fuel cells to power their spacecraft. Without it, their ship is dead. Engineers face a stark choice.
The thing that I wanted to do ASAP was fire that damn engine. If we had been able to do that, we could have turned around and had him landed in about 15 hours.
But flight director Eugene Krantz can't bring himself to try it.
The problem occurred back in the area of the big engine. I just did not trust it. I had a gut feeling that says, don't use it.
Krantz opts to keep the astronauts headed further into space, all the way to the moon. If it works, the moon's gravity will capture the ship and slingshot it back toward home. It's a risky plan, and the lives of 3 astronauts depend on it. As billions around the world follow Apollo 13's ill-fated journey to the moon, Lovell, Swigert, and Hayes abandon their dying mothership. They seek refuge in the delicate lunar module, using its small engine to keep themselves on course.
The LEM was our only lifeline. It was all that was left.
On April 17, 1970, 4 days after the explosion, Apollo 13 has just enough power to return to Earth.
Odyssey, Houston, we show you on the mains. It really looks great.
At NASA, the mission enters the books as a successful failure. But a follow-up investigation reveals just how narrowly Apollo 13 averted complete disaster. The explosion was easily powerful enough to have ripped the ship in two, had it blasted inward rather than out toward space.
Now that would have been Katie bar the door. It went all over right then, because they were out of their suits, and they would have lost pressure and been dead shortly.
The saving grace of Apollo 13 is luck. Although Apollo astronauts never again face such a dire dilemma, danger remains their constant companion. Over 3.5 years, the missions progress from a few tentative steps to 3-day stays, with 2 men living in this hostile land.
Oh, spectacular. Just spectacular.
For the astronauts, any fears are quickly eclipsed by wonder.
This place is just absolutely incredible.
I felt in awe of the beauty of the moon. It was the most serene place that I'd ever experienced.
But the biggest thrill is moving in the moon's 1/6 gravity.
Down here on Earth, with all of my equipment on, I think I weighed like 362 pounds. Well, up on the moon, it was only 60 pounds.
Well, it was an experiment I had that weighed 420 earth pounds. Put it all together with one hand, lift it up, walk around. Here I am thinking, this is the best day I've ever had.
Absolutely unreal.
John Young and Charlie Duke reached the moon in April 1972 on Apollo 16.
Man, we are really going up a hill, I'll tell you.
One of 3 missions to include the lunar rover.
Sorry, Charlie. I gotta keep my eye on the driving. That's great.
I did try to run fast a couple of times, and I found like I was a little out of control. John, on the other hand, he had outstanding balance.
Come on out here and give me a salute. Big Navy salute. There we go.
All told, the 6 Apollo missions collect more than 800 pounds of moon rocks that lead to significant scientific breakthroughs. In 2011, 4 NASA legends are awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, John Glenn, and Michael Collins.
The Apollo 11 crew is honored to receive the Congressional Gold Medal and accept, on behalf of our fellow Apollo teammates and all those who played a role in expanding human knowledge of the solar system and beyond.
Less than a year later, Neil Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon, dies at 82.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Like Neil Armstrong's legacy, human fascination with space travel endures. And another Apollo astronaut is leading the charge to reach the next frontier in space.
Hi, I'm Buzz Aldrin, the one that went to the moon. Quite frankly, forget the moon. Why haven't we been to Mars?
Buzz Aldrin has a new mission: get humans to Mars by 2035, 66 years after he and Neil Armstrong walked on the moon.
Mars is our future. Youngsters born in the year 2000 and 2010, they will be the people making the first landings on Mars. And it's those kids that we would like to have enthusiastic about the future.
Whatever the future holds for humans in space, the Apollo missions paved the way.
All right, we're looking good.
And continue to inspire generations young and old. After traveling farther than any human before, what is it like to turn around and go home? It's a feeling only those select few who have made the journey can describe.
I think we've seen as much in 10 days as most people see in 10 lifetimes.
We pleaded with Mission Control to let us stay another 2 hours, but they didn't. On the next day, I watched the moon just sort of shrinking down. I can't say I was depressed, but I was disappointed to have left. I had such a good time, and I wish we could have gone back again.
We had been dreaming about this thing for years and training hard and doing everything, and we get to the moon, and in 2 days, 33 hours, we're back in orbit. I mean, it was just too quick. It's just over too quick.
Before he left, Charlie Duke dropped a picture of his family on the surface. On the geologically inert moon, that picture will last for millennia, as will 3 golf balls, dozens of experiments, 3 lunar rovers, and the footsteps of 12 brave and lucky men.